Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lindsay Marshall. I'm the room captain for today, and thanks for coming in on the last day. We've got a really exciting session. Let's give some really fantastic energy. I'm joined by Dan Sochanu and Casper Peterson, and they're going to take you through the new SAS SpeedyStore offering. So let's give it up for the guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Good morning. Welcome to our presentation. Before we get into the details of what SAS SpeedyStore is and why this is extremely valuable, let's set up what the problem statement is here for many organizations around the world. So many years ago, I was a database manager for a large bank, and I managed the entire customer database. And I remember back then, and it was quite a long time ago, we did a lot of batch loads overnight. We did a lot of data movement that took a really long amount of time. And fast forward to today, I thought that was a thing of the past. And then yesterday, there was a great presentation from David Week that he manages chronic disease data here in the US, and he was talking about data loads that are taking an entire day, right? So clearly we haven't solved that one in the real world as much as, there's been a lot of advancements and a lot of cool technology. So for analytics and for AI, the challenge has been not only multiple databases, but the challenge has been multiple architectures. So up into a very recent time, if you had a transactional database and it was OLTP, right, so online transactional processing, if you were doing analytics, you were probably doing it with an OLAP architecture, right? And those two architectures were quite different. So what that results in is having to shuttle data back and forth constantly. And that creates a lot of problems. A lot of the main problems, besides inefficiency, in today's environment with compute costs, that actually is a higher cost today than it was before, because a lot of the platforms are storage and compute separate. And duplication of data and having to keep data synced in a way that isn't efficient because you're constantly moving data around in loads as opposed to having one source for all your data for analytics. So this has been a true struggle for people that are involved in this for many years, and that's why we're so excited to introduce SpeedyStore. So before we talk about the details of the offering, let's talk about what SingleStore is. So SingleStore is an incredibly intuitive technology and company, and what they've done is they've created a hybrid architecture. So we were just talking about transactional databases versus analytical databases. And what SingleStore has done is they've taken the best of both worlds. So the best of transactional in-memory, typically row-based, with the OLAP architecture, which is typically columnar or column-based, and typically used in data warehouses for analytics. So this hybrid architecture allows for one database to be able to do all of your AI and analytics. And that's the reason that we wanted to partner with SingleStore, because this is the perfect environment to do analytics and AI. So what is SpeedyStore? So it's an OEM partnership between SAS and SingleStore, and you get all of the power of SAS Viya as well as all the full power of a SingleStore instance. So they are packaged together, they're integrated, and there's absolutely nothing that is left out. So it would be just as if you had Viya separately or SingleStore separately, but integrated, for those purposes. So Casper, we have a couple of key points that we want to get to regarding the key benefit statements, so data acceleration, et cetera. But before we get into that, you're with customers every day, and they have these challenges. So what are your thoughts on these challenges and how this SpeedyStore could be the solution?
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. As you said, this partnership, this SpeedyStore, is actually a really great partnership that we've been working on for quite some years now. And we've done that because we've been actually listening to you, see what your requirements been, what your challenges are, and that's been incorporated into what we have now. And I said, by far, and I really, really mean this. This is the best database out there that is optimized and designed to run SaaS workload, period. And as you heads up, we have transactional databases, you have analytical databases, and that architecture just becomes quite a big mess at the moment. We mentioned cost as well. I think we're all learning the hard way that the cloud can be very expensive. Cloud is not cheap. Nobody claims that anymore, not even the cloud providers, because it brings a lot of other benefits. But if you do this wrong in the beginning, you can definitely feel that on your wallet very, very shortly afterwards. Data movement, we saw that as well. So really what I'm facing when I have the pleasure of meeting our customers and our colleagues around the world is, as we see, both the data accelerations, we want to speed up things. We do know that cost is a big factor. We are also totally aware that the Viya platform has a significant footprint, but that is a part of our strategy. As you heard Brian and Gavin and who not, we're really trying to reduce that footprint in the same time. So cost is a big theme for us. We learn how to optimize things. We learn how to optimize our platforms and making sure that that is fit for purpose, and you shutting it down when you don't need it. That is also the beauty of native cloud installations. So we mentioned 4 of those, and we go a bit more into details, but as you heard, I mentioned cost quite a few times, because that is what I'm speaking most about. I'm heading up our architect and data team in EMEA, and that is what we've been facing a lot when we're out here, and that's really what we're trying to optimize and fine-tune, and this is just perfect for that.
Excellent. So let's dive into the details here. So let's begin with just an overview. So this is what we can tongue-in-cheek call a marketecture. So it's not a logical architecture, but kind of gives you an idea of all the components. So anything you want to highlight in this overview, Casper?
Yeah, I think the more you digest this slide, I actually wanted the SingleStore to be on the bottom of it, because that is what we're putting more and more our effort and solutions on it, because as I said, it is designed and optimized to run the SaaS workload. It really is. I know I'm jumping almost into the next ones, but I said designed and optimized, you can reduce 50% your infrastructure if you are a CAS lighthouse. So your VA, your model studio, you're reducing it just by that, because said we are pushing the technology, we're pushing the data into the data store underneath it. But as I said, I'm getting ahead of my time here, but I'm super excited about it. But yeah, this architecture kind of gives you an overview how it all is put together. It's not a new thing for us. We've been working very close with SingleStore years now to making sure that this is a quite mature product. I'm not going to steal the thunder from the last slide, but yeah.
Very good, thank you. So let's dive into some specifics here. So let's look at a highly simplified view of some workflows here. So what you see here is batch processing on the right, streaming and unstructured data on the left, and the left would be a transactional database, and the right is an analytical database. So what we're doing with SingleStore is giving you that layer that Casper just talked about that sits on top of that, and it enables you to do all of the processing on that one database. So let's get into a little more detail on the benefits there. So for data acceleration, what do we mean by data acceleration? So the fact that you're not shuttling data around, and the fact that this integration is optimized to take full advantage of all the benefits of SingleStore means that everything is faster, it's less repetitive, and a higher performance in addition to not having to move data around. But when you're actually running those analytical queries, it actually runs faster. Anything you want to add to that, Casper?
Oh, so much. No, you said streaming. You had streaming on the previous slides. Again, an inherent benefit that we got from the partnership. And we got customers streaming 1 million rows a second into this one. So the streaming capabilities on the SingleStore is absolutely mind-blowing. It's fantastic on that one. And we start to see those whole IoT use cases really flowering up within healthcare, within pharmaceuticals, manufacturing. We can see the use for this one. So the stream capabilities, I said it's a side perk of the partnership and the product is mind-blowing. 1 million rows per second, and it can even do more than that. And we have underneath it up to 50 petabyte of data at one of our customers. So it's pretty crazy, the speed that we are getting delivered out of this solution here as well. So impressive, really is.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit more about that cost reduction, because this is one of the very essential benefits, because the cost reduction comes in a variety of ways. So you're reducing cost in terms of reducing duplication of data. That's one gigantic cost savings. You heard Casper just mention the performance benefits. So performance matters not just in speed, but it matters in cost because you're paying for compute resources. And one of the things about this, about SpeedyStore, is that the compute is all happening in SingleStore, right? So we're pushing down SAS analytical processes into that database, and the compute's happening there. What that means is that you're not being charged separately like you are in various cloud environments for the compute resources, in addition to the storage and the migration. In addition to deduplicating data, it's something that you can automate as well. So as you would imagine, if you're not having to shuttle data back and forth, you can create routines and procedures that automate data uploads into SingleStore. So what am I missing, Casper? There's probably some few other things.
Yes. No, we finally came to the cost one that I'm quite passionate about, and I think you should take a picture, a screen dump of this one, because it says a lot more than what we're trying to explain here. But we've been talking about hot and cold data. That is an exercise, something we should have done 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But as I said, back to the cost, it becomes really expensive. I mean, if you want speed, you get premium storage. There's a solid state disk, and you get charged for that. So it comes as an exercise we really have to take seriously. What it doesn't really represent very well here on the slide, that's the auto tiering. So the solution on its own knows which data is hot, warm, lukewarm, cold, and whatever, and then puts that up into those 3 buckets. That is saving so much money and making sure that only the right data is available for those people instantly. And right now in the market, everybody's like 1 cent per gigabyte, this and that. That's not value. I mean, that just shows you what the cold storage is. And we're not competing on cold storage. You can get free storage on cold, and as soon as you start using those data, you will see that wallet that's spinning around really heavily. So I said the auto tiering is just one of the benefits here. Compression, that's more like an industry standard. Everybody does compression. But whenever you take the compressed data, it has to be uncompressed somewhere. And I said that's where we have the benefits, that we keep that in the stomach of the data store and the SingleStore underneath it, making sure that we're only having the aggregated data into the cache session, into the memory session where the expense is. So I said you can really reduce that memory-intense storage by using the SpeedyStore underneath it. So yeah, it's really good. And again, it works with a 9x platform, a 3.5 platform. It is a Viya product. But of course, we are inheriting a legacy as well and making sure that also receives the benefits. So, yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So let's build this out a little bit for a typical customer implementation. So there's going to be data coming in and out of SpeedyStore in a variety of different formats and sources. So this is everything from traditional data warehouses and database management systems like Oracle, SQL Server, et cetera. And anybody a shop that is very Apache centric in terms of Iceberg and things of that nature, coming from Snowflake or Cloudera or any other, in Cloudera's case, Hadoop centric, or data lakehouse customers that are taking full use of Databricks data lakehouse architecture. The point is that we've got change data capture happening in both directions, coming in and out of SingleStore, and the whole point, as you see in the middle, is the solution. So a single platform, a single data store, a single engine, and this it's absolutely separate from any kind of data flows that are coming in. It doesn't matter where the data is coming from, and it doesn't matter where you're publishing the data out to. The whole point is that it gives you a platform to not only be able to run your analytics, but to build applications off of that platform. So, Casper, I know we were talking last night about some of the customer engagements that you have. So maybe you could give us an example of some customers that are really looking to do this.
Yeah. Well, we don't have time for that, so much time for that. But the way I will probably go back, and I'm reading this slide slightly different than you do.
Okay.
And that's no offense or anything like that. But to me, this shows that and displays the openness. This is the openness of what the SpeedyStore does. There's no competition against any of these vendors out there. We can read and write, we've done that for years, but there is a perception of a competition about the data. We don't try to replace any other databases out there. Not all, we can, but that's not the goal here. It's the coexistence. It's very important to make sure that it's a coexistence. and don't become into a political war of we made this strategy. It is about the coexistence. And you see the whole CDC, we have native interfaces to all these ones. I said, we just have a different purpose. Set back to the SAS optimized workload. None of those have that. We can run SAS and all the other vendors you see here on the screen, not a problem there. But this one is fine-tuned and optimized exactly for that one. And the way that we exchange data to and from the other ones is CDC, it's super fast and it's native. It doesn't, there's no security policies, there is under threat or anything like that. So for me, as I said, this is the openness, the streaming, the side benefits, the new iceberg, and we're having DocDB engines and stuff like that, so we can work with that, and it's a coexistence. And that's, I said that like 3 times now, that's very important for me to get that message across, and I think I did that.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so thank you for mentioning the just general openness of it. So in addition to being able to build applications, obviously it's architected to be extremely open and ready for any data from anywhere. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what that means for building a platform for analytics and AI, and why that is a benefit. So at the beginning, we talked about having to integrate data from a variety of data sources repetitively and in a very ad hoc way that doesn't allow for optimization, doesn't allow for automation, doesn't allow for data cleansing in the right way in terms of really understanding your data. So there are quite a few, and I want to, Casper, I'm going to throw it over to you again because you're with customers every single week. What do you want to highlight here in terms of a single data platform with the customers that you're working with?
Yeah, it will be openness again. Before it was the platform openness, now this is the data openness. What we are doing, instead of having, I love the SAS 7B, that file format, I love it, absolutely. It's slightly proprietary, very difficult for other investments to look into. And that's a third thing that we overcome with this one. We're opening up the SAS infrastructure, the SAS estate, the SAS data estate, so other investments in the organization get the benefit of what's being done within the Viya platform. So as I said, I'm reading this as the open platform of the data, which is about time, most likely, yeah, I guess. But that's, as I said, the third benefit of this platform. That is the open data to across the organization to the rest of the investment within your organization. So that's how I interpret that one. And it's just an SQL. It's just everybody can read and write from it. It's truly open.
Absolutely, and also one thing we didn't mention is just reducing not just redundant data flows, but redundant work streams from human beings. Because without having a solution like SingleStore, oftentimes in organizations there are different groups that are performing similar but slightly different analytics and AI across the organization, pulling from different data sources with different transformations, with different parameters, different variables, and this just creates even more complexity in the organization and leads to some of that higher cost and inefficiency. So having a single platform has numerous benefits. One of those main benefits is not only consolidating databases into one database that you're using for analytics and AI, but in and of itself, that reduces the duplication of data across the enterprise. So I could tell you I've lived this myself as a practitioner when I was managing a customer database for a large bank. The amount of siloed data that we had across the organization was a daily challenge, and being able to bring that together to create a holistic view of the customer was an extremely manual process. And the reason it was manual is because we were trying to integrate 12 different systems and rationalize that and normalize that every single month, sometimes twice a month. And it was not optimal in any way, shape, or form. I would have loved to have had something like SingleStore back then. It would have made my life quite a bit easier. So moving on, one benefit we haven't talked about so far is once you have the single platform for your data and your analytics, this now opens it up to the full power of SAS overall, but SAS Visual Analytics in particular. So for customers that have a lot of different SAS data sets and they're trying to consolidate analytics into one platform, this is absolutely essential, because even across a lot of our customers, there are pockets of analytics that are happening with SAS in the organization because there's not one single database for that analytics to be run. and this solves that problem. Casper, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think that summarized the two previous one. When I mentioned the openness of the platform, openness of the data, this is exactly that example we see with customers. So this is a true use case that we're doing, where we're opening up to whatever previous investment that has been done. As said, you can really leverage this across the whole organizations. And as the previous slide also showed about, where we want to have that, we're using the word single quite a lot, single point of contact, single unified catalog and stuff like that. But it is important that everybody gets the same data from the same source. So we don't sit up in those meetings like, where do you get those reports? Where do you get those data from? And we start fighting about the results instead of actually acting on the results, making a decision based on the results. Now we have a chance because it can really handle that multiple users on the same data set. And it really takes that choice and control. We give everybody whatever choice they want to do. As you've seen on our SAS Studio presentation, bring your own language. We truly mean that. And give all our users, new, young, old, whatever they are, the ability to use whatever they want, but it has to be in that controlled environment, and that's what we have here. And as you said, it's opening up for everybody in the sector, not just the SAS department or the SAS users, but truly everybody in the organizations. And we are getting, I'm pretty busy at the moment, and that's exactly what we are modernizing at the moment.
Yeah, Casper says he's pretty busy. He's got about 50 engagements going on right now around the world, just with SingleStore exploration and implementation. So let's talk about, again, for the existing SAS user, let's talk about speeding up SAS code execution. So the thing that we probably should have made a little more bold in this slide is that the key takeaway here is no refactoring required. So if you've ever had to migrate data and refactor that data, it is not a trivial exercise. So the fact that you don't have to refactor with this, that it's optimized for existing SAS code, data step, et cetera, into SingleStore, that is a gigantic, not only efficiency benefit, but also an optimization. And ultimately, I think that leads to cost savings as well. So,
absolutely. This is, as I said, we're pushing so much of the techniques into the data store. And this is exactly what we're doing. And said, this is just the beginning of this journey. And I said, this is customer driven. This is demand driven for you guys out there. So the more users we get on this, the more feedback we want from you. We are very close with our product management and on R&D. They want to know what you see, what benefits do you want to get pushed into it. The more we push into it, the less and the more aggregated data we put up in that premium storage, those memory intensive storage. So as I said, we want to push so much we can down to the database, which is designed to run this. And the embedded process is not a new thing. We used to have that on the Teradata back in the days. So this is just a revamp of that fantastic technology that we are bringing back to life, I guess.
Excellent. So let's talk about another key benefit, which is scalability, and in particular, scaling concurrent users on very, very large data. So again, I can tell you that I've felt this pain personally. As soon as you're trying to add users and add them for data sets that are incredibly large and with queries that are incredibly complex, you get a lot of delays. You get a lot of kind of clock scrolling and things not loading and things, erroring out, having to reinitiate that particular job, et cetera, et cetera. So scaling, concurrent users on extremely large data is, again, it's not a new challenge, but it's still a pervasive challenge that is still plaguing a lot of organizations today. So this SAS SingleStore solves this inherently in the architecture. Because of the fact that we're enabling people on one platform and all the analytics being run on there, it's a lot easier to scale up users, even if the data sets are extremely large, even if the queries are very complex, in SingleStore. So, Casper, anything you want to add?
I think what's important here is our definition of concurrent users. I mean, these are real users. These are users that's actually pressuring the system, not just the viewers, not the dashboard viewers. That is not considered as a user, maybe from a license perspective, but not for how we're pushing and pushing this one. So we're having some great customers together with SingleStore where we're talking about hundreds of concurrent users streaming million rows a second into it on petabyte of data. That's our definition of concurrent users, and that's what we can do. Not the fancy reporting at the end, Power BI, SAS Viya, whatever it is. That is what we have set the definition, and it's crazy powerful. It is. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the main takeaway here for SAS SingleStore is that being able to achieve those faster insights without having to move data is a huge competitive advantage. Actually, not just a competitive advantage in your analytics and AI and data operations, but ultimately a competitive advantage in your core business. So, final thing that I'll leave you with is that this is available right now. This is not future tech. This is not something that we're working on in some skunkworks project. This is available right now. So we would love to. Yeah, Casper, you had one more thing you want to say?
Maybe I'm thinking too fast. I feel like I'm missing something. I probably wasn't emphasizing, maybe wasn't emphasizing enough that this is also, this is a true hybrid, just like Viya. You can install it in a public tenant, but this is also on-prem as well. So you can have this in your own data, private sensor, on your own where facilities there is. So this is also an on-prem solution as well. So it is, as I said, it's hand in hand with the Viya platform, which is both things as well. And I said, we see those hybrid where very sensitive data is kept on-prem on private data centers, and then you have innovation or transaction data up in the cloud. So apologies if I missed that previously. So it's that's something I just want to have out there.
That's okay. I missed it too. So
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning it.
All right.
So yeah, so I think that that concludes our presentation. We'd love to hear some questions or comments.
Yeah, we actually have a question that's came in from one of the guys streaming, so I'll just go ahead and read it out and you can answer. So since this involves multiple data source integrations, do we have any data security or encryption in place for this SingleStore architecture?
Well, the answer is yes, of course. Yes, we do. There is encryption in transit wherever we're touching upon it. And depending on what sources we're talking about, we have it from a SAS perspective, but also have it from the SingleStore perspective. So we actually get twice the amount of capabilities on how we are streaming integrated to those sources. But I said, short one, absolutely, there is encryptions. We are complying with any regulations we have out there, GDPR, PIPP, whatever they're called. So yes, short answer, but we're happy to come back to that person who asked that question, for sure.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir. Hang on one second. Let me just get the mic so everyone can hear you.
Yes. What we are looking for as a solution is for the user management of data. Now, for SingleStore, how is the user management integrated? Is it integrated with the SCIM, or how does that work?
Oh,
Because we have, it's a financial company, so you need to have very much tight control on the data. So that's our day-to-day job. So
yeah. I can't go too much into details because my knowledge is not on that level. But absolutely, as I said, we have quite an extensive group of financial customers using this one, so I know it's in place. And I also know there's several of places where we are taking that security from. As I said, the SingleStore on its own has its security if you want to add complexity, but it also inherits what other information systems you're taking it from. So the single sign-on can be used on that, on LDAP, whatever we have. So you actually have quite a few choices. We have customers, as a financial service industry, where we have the same store, but we're splitting it up like the old schemes. Remember the old schemes? It's actually the same data, but we're having a scheme for each state, I believe it's called over here. So each state has its own scheme, but it's the same data store underneath it. So you can be quite creative, quite flexible, and it gives that overview of who does what and who can access it by having that kind of physical overview of the schemes or the databases inside it. It's very, very similar to create a new database. It's just a virtualization of the same data, and you partition the data in that one. So it's pretty cool.
wonderful. One more question, if
Yeah.
So today, what we have is we have a data source from Teradata, where the data is brought down, and then, for lack of better word, a lot of analysts have their own views on the data set. And so it's nothing but duplication of data, like 100 data sets out of the coming one master data set. Yeah. So how does this address that? Like, I heard that it's going to be, data duplication is, will be gone. My question is, the term I heard was that The data does not go to SAS, but SAS is brought down to SingleStore. So how does that work in this context?
Well, I said the majority of the workload goes into the SpeedyStore. And I said that was the embedded processor you saw when we're pushing that one. Not all of it, but majority, as much as we can push down, and we only have that aggregated up into the cache session. So there was an example of 8 different kind of embedded processors, and I said we're working on it as soon as we have use cases and feedback from you guys on what you need us to prioritize on it. So as I said, not everything is in the stomach. We used to have that also in Teradata days. We had we have a partnership with Teradata. You know Teradata better than I do. But it's the same embedded processors we're pushing down.
And the other thing that I would add to what Casper mentioned is that all of those consolidations into SingleStore can be automated, right? So that's part of the reduction in duplication and data movement, is that it can be completely automated, right? Depending on when the data gets synced in the source systems. So it's not a manual process. So that's another huge advantage. So.
And as you said, the same users can use the same data. They're not locking the data. And that's why people have done it. You know, I'm working on this one, do a copy, so this is my own data.
Right.
You know, we're not locking the data on the SpeedyStore instance. So everybody uses the same data, whether it's streaming or whether it's just transactional CDC data. As I said, that's the power of it. Only one set of data in it that everybody can work on. And it just scales out. It is really scalable. It's bottomless storage. That's also a very fancy word, but it's truly bottomless. You can just add storage on it, add more nodes, database units.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
A quick question. The data is decompressed in the compute, and if it is, then what's the overhead on the compute when it's decompressed?
So just to make sure I understand the question, right? So the overhead, as in, are you looking for how much it gets reduced in terms of the overhead, or are you
what
just
percentage or whatever?
about?
It was from that slide, and that was a
conservative
one. But we're looking at
This one?
no, further back. It's actually the beginning. But while we wait for you to find that one, we're looking. The last customer worked on, we had 87% compression of it. I mean, there's different ways of compressing. I mean, visual analytics already today has duplicate value reduction as a part of it. So we have different techniques on compressing it. It's very difficult to see, isn't it? But that's the light one in the corner that has some other compressions of it. That's just the assumptions of it. But we're working as in the high 80s of the compression of the data.
Yeah, I get that part. I'm saying it has to be decompressed before the compute can work on it.
Yep, that's true. But I said I'm only taking the aggregated data up. So I'm not taking the full, so the compressed data. I'm doing my embedded processing, making sure that I only have the data that's needed to be up in that layer. So out of, I can't say, without a terabyte of data, maybe only need 100 megabyte of that. So that's the embedded processors. So only making sure that that data comes up into the memory section afterwards. Good question, thank you.
Yeah, very good question. Anyone else?
We were aiming for 30 minutes. I think we're
Yes,
pretty
sir.
close.
Yeah.
Oh, we got
Down
one
here.
here. Let's see.
Lou Flynn, SAS. Hey, real quick question. You were saying you're using versions of this with IoT data?
Yes.
What's the footprint look like for that? Because, you know, obviously a lot of people on-premise, off-premise, but at the edge, you know, that sounds impressive. What's that look like? And could you elaborate on the use case a little bit?
A little bit. Yeah, I can do my best. So the use case very close to my home at the moment is a manufacturing use case that is streaming medical equipment, cleansing of that one. And I said that is shop floor processing we're doing on that one. But of course, with the IoT one, that does it on the edge, so that builds the that algorithm into the edge. But the streaming, that's where we put the same algorithm into the engine of that one. So once it streams in back to a customer, has 1 million rows a second, it applies that analytics in that streaming capability of it. So that was not very much in details, but we're getting a lot more. We didn't expect those IoT use cases, but they're really flowering up at the moment because, as I said, the inherent benefits we get of the partnership is the streaming capabilities, which is market leading. But we need to explore more of that one, and Lou, we need to work on that one as well.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Wait for the mic.
This gentleman up here in the blue shirt.
Is it compatible? Okay, the first question is, where is it installed or deployed? Is it deployed with a SaaS deployment, or is it deployed independently, or is it cloud-based? On what layer is the SingleStore based on?
How do you want it? It does all those three things. So for a new Viya instance, we deploy it together with that one, but it can be completely de-linked from that. Existing SAS Viya customers, we're doing the deployment now. All the public cloud vendors out there, we support those ones. It's supported into a hosted managed service as well, the SaaS cloud, and the on-prem. I'm operating a lot in the Middle East where we have to have that on-prem as well, but we do a hybrid. So they have the public, transaction data, some of it not sensitive in the cloud. So we have two instances, Viya in the cloud, Viya on-prem, SAS SpeedyStore in the cloud, and SAS SpeedyStore on-prem. So it's irritating, super flexible. It can do exactly those scenarios that you described there.
And thank you very much for that answer. Now, to add to that, you talked about the OpenDB. So what that essentially is, like, suppose we have some other tools that want to use the data, like Vertex AI. Can they tap into it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and we probably should have done a little bit deeper dive on that when we were talking about using it as a platform to build other apps. That's exactly the use case that we were talking about. So yes, 100%.
Yeah. What we are doing most of the time, a lot of great customers, they have whatever Fabric or 365 and Power BI. It should use that data because there's so much intelligence in that data, and that's just a simple add-on to it, and then they can start reading from the same data source. So that is the easiest one, and we're talking about very, very short implementation for it. Once it's up and running, it's an open interface. It's SQL. That's standard.
And I would just assume BQ is one of the data sources, can be a data source.
Yes. Yeah.
One thing is that how good it will be for model development. Like our baseline is to do model development in Model Studio.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Is it helpful in that perspective?
It is.
That specific
yes.
use
Yeah.
case?
Because what Model Studio does, it does the same thing as the Viya instance, is that CAS-intensive infrastructure, lots of file systems. So we just talked about cost. I'm doing about 50% reduction in that one, and then I'm speeding up the rest of the development. So you will, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will show you some demonstrations. We wish we had time to have prepared a bit more here, but you will see some crazy benchmarking on SAS Model Studio, visual analytics use cases, streaming back to IoT manufacturing. We will come, so talk is cheap. We will make sure that we will show and prove that one. And as Dan said, I'm in the middle of doing about 15, 17 POCs as we speak, because we're opening up the engine room and people want to see it. It sounds too good to be true. And you can call my bluff, and we will show you that we can do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good question. Anyone else?
Any more? No? Okay.
Excellent.
So I'd really love us all to say a massive thanks to Dan and to Casper for their experience and their insights into this new exciting offer. So yeah, let's give it up for the guys.
Thank you.
Very kind. Thank you.
Too soon to be falling so far.